Welcome to the Euro edition of Lama Drives. But Ray's driving. DCRainmaker. How you doing, Ray?
Good. Sorry, Vaughn. You got replaced.
16,000 k's away from home, and we're here on the right side of the road, which for me is the wrong. I'm all very confused. But
you didn't crash. You did good. Last a couple hours, you were cruising along, and all was fine.
Ray stuck me on the freeway. Are they called freeways? Highway, autobahn? Where are we on?
Big road.
The big road.
Yeah.
And just said, this pedal does this pedal does this. They're the same. The pedals aren't swapped, so I'm okay with that. I can drive back home okay and go. But driving what I'd call a large snail is kind of weird. It's a bit of flex, bit of sway. It doesn't handle like a bike.
It definitely rocks and rolls a bit, and I'm sure folks can see in the back things like bouncing around, and hopefully nothing flies around too much.
You'll see a few GPS units fly around, a few power meters.
Like a team car.
Tour de France starts in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Everyone's getting ready for it. So we're about 400 k's away from where we're heading, so it's a long trip down, but I thought we'd just have a quick chat with Ray about what's coming up, what we hope to see, and probably the three big areas. So smart trainers, power meters, and GPS units, and we'll just generally shoot the breeze while we tick over the K. So Ray, we've heard you talk about dial tones or baseline, I guess, feature sets on GPS watches. And I think off the top of my head, they were obviously battery life, accuracy, multi-sport.
Yep.
Also in 2018, you've mentioned contactless payments.
Yep, that's another one.
We've seen music come out.
Music, contactless payments, that whole realm there of just devices become more integrated. And some people in the really kind of endurance sports realm, I don't want music on my wrist, or I don't want whatever on my wrist. But the reality is, for companies like Garmin and others, for them to remain successful in producing products, they have to appeal to the mass market, which doesn't mean you're taking away anything from anything else. The battery life on the newest Phoenix watches is in the same ballpark as it was before, but now it has music, and now it has contactless payments, and now it has full color mapping. And for mainstream markets, the full color mapping isn't super exciting, but music and contactless payments are definitely exciting. And people have to remember too that in the case of watches like that, you're talking 1 million plus units being the norm now for Garmin for a Phoenix series, which that was never the case a couple of years ago for a 4-1 or even early Phoenix series. It just didn't happen. And they're the number 2 smartwatch maker in the world now, behind Apple.
I was going to mention Apple because I've had the 925 since Eurobike last year.
Yep.
Loving the 925, does everything that I need it to do for my running and a bit of riding. Well, I've been using it here for my bike GPS. But since I've gone the Apple Watch, the running with that, it's the music. Which has got me over to Apple Watch. So I'll give up a little bit of battery life, a lot of battery life for that. So very interesting. So speaking about baselines of functionality, smart trainers, what would be your baseline or your dial tone of a smart trainer being released in 2018?
I think number one is anything over, I would say, $650, $700 has to have accuracy of plus or minus 2%. Maybe 2.5% is fine. If you get below that price point, you can get to 3.5%. I think even claims of plus or minus 5% at $600 this year is going to be a tough pitch. I think we're seeing companies continue to crank that price and accuracy lever harder and harder. And if you're coming in with a plus or minus 5% trainer at $600, that's going to be definitely behind the curve of the competition going forward. And you can certainly succeed in other ways, right? You can add other features or other things that are more important. But I think that's there. I think beyond that, obviously, AMP Plus and Bluetooth Smart, not in just having those protocols, but having AMP Plus FEC for control, Bluetooth Smart FTMS for control, and then broadcasting of AMP Plus power and ideally speed, as well as Bluetooth Smart power and speed. Those 4, to me, are the baseline things you need to have.
Now, we've had a discussion in the last few days about power accuracy of a trainer. We see some down to, they say, less than 1 or greater than 1% accuracy or 1% margin of error. It's really interesting how they actually advertise it. Somebody pulled up the other day that the Neo was less than 1% accurate. It's sort of shorthand for 1% margin of error, so it's going to be 99% accurate. Kind of hard to read it. Do you think they need to go to 1%? Are we chasing perfection in power monitoring for no reason at all?
I don't think it matters at that point anymore. I think for the vast majority of the market, and I think even those that say it does, I question really does. I think if you look at just for a second, power meters, right, with Specialized, they did a lot of work around their power meter accuracy and what they did there and testing, and some really phenomenal testing came out of them for validating their unit. But there was still like edge cases. There's still the, like, in this rare scenario, you're plus or minus 1.7% or plus or minus 2.2% because of all these things, like cross chain on a really, really hot day with, I mean, it was just like this whole like list of things.
Yeah.
And you go, well, that's always probably going to exist. And I think people, I mean, you see this certainly with testing power meters as well. Like sometimes you just have weird power meter days that there's no good explanation for, and no amount of plus or minus 1% accuracy testing seems to address that, I think. And so it's the same with trainers, that I think if you're under 2%, you're within the realm that realistically seems to matter for trainers these days.
That's what I'd have to agree with that. Plus or minus 2%. You're not going to get wild swings in erg mode pretty much across the range that the normal human operates in, which is probably between 175 and maybe 430 for the elites doing, you know, longer intervals in. That kind of range there, if you get plus or minus 2%, as long as it's reliable, repeatable, and the data is clean, I think you're about right there. I think it's a bit of a furphy to be chasing that zero margin of error.
And I think not only that, but I'd much rather see plus or minus 2% with zero calibration needed, right? So like a Neo style scenario, then plus or minus 1% that calibration is needed every ride. Otherwise it's plus or minus 5 or 7%. Like, I love seeing those trainers like the Drivo and the Neo that calibration simply isn't, it's not like a day-to-day reality versus something like a $600 trainer, like the Kicker Snap. Calibration is a day-to-day reality for certain.
Tire dependent, tire pressure, tire wear, heat. There's a lot that comes into it. So jumping over to power meters and your dial tone on power meters for 2018.
I think it's without question plus or minus 2%. I think I like seeing claims at plus or minus 1.5%. Mostly because when I see those claims at that level, that means I'm hoping they're doing something behind the scenes to support that claim. Still, the rush towards plus or minus 1%, like, I just don't see it. I've seen companies, not to pick on Favero, right? I think Favero has plus or minus 1%. They're doing great stuff. They've got an incredible power meter at that price point and blah, blah, blah. Like, awesome, go buy Favero, whatever. But I don't believe those plus or minus 1% claims, like, because I just don't see it. And there's too many other scenarios there where, as I said, you get oddities and you're like, well, plus or minus 1% unless you stop and start really quick, right? And then in which case that doesn't matter for 2 seconds, and it's like, well, how does that contribute to the overall claim? To me, I'm not super focused on plus or minus 1% or even 0.5%. I'm focused on, is it consistently plus or minus 2% across temperature compensation issues and humidity and cross-chaining and all that kind of stuff, like vibration, especially vibrations. Those are what I'm focused on. I was talking with the power meter company that, you know, I did some tests and they were like between 10 and 20 watts high and stuff, and they were asking like, what does it take to hit this, like, the mark of what I would consider a good power meter? And I kind of said, well, that's not it to begin with. But beyond that, like, if you look at some of the best power meters I've tested or the best trainers I tested, those stacked lines, if they're assuming they're measuring from the same spot, should be perfect. Like between 2 or 3 or 4 units, they should be like spot on perfect. And not just on day 1 or day 5 or day 10, but on day 30 and 40, and they should be in the right order every single time. So meaning, like, if you have like a pedal-based power meter like Vector, SRM, or whoever, PowerTap or Asiomo, that should be the highest. And then as you move your way from the pedal down through the crankset, through the chain to the rear hub there, that should be the lowest. And if that doesn't happen every single time, then that tells you the state of power meter accuracy in the industry isn't quite what people say it is.
What I've found recently, just personal experience, and a lot of it I have, with the power meters that measure on both sides, we have independent power meters now. So I guess back in the past we've had, well, I've started with quarks and power taps. Those things we were never able to validate. Are they really right or not? We can do static weight hanging tests and things like that, but we never had the accurate smart trainers that we do now. So our power meters, I don't think have gotten any more, I guess, you're still going to see variance, but now what we're having is 2 power meters each side of our bike on the pedals. So you've got twice as much variance potentially.
Like the issues you had with Vector 3, where one was fine, but the other one was not fine, and that even gets to, like you point out, static calibration, so hanging weights and stuff like that. And a lot of people are like, oh, I want to statically calibrate, which was great in your case because it helped you validate that. But for the vast majority of power meter issues we see today, that's not the problem. The problem is typically it's cadence driven by bumps in the road, right? And it's temperature. Those are the big two, and you can't test for that indoors. Like,
It's a tough one. It's a tough one, but that's what I'm finding. We're having 2 power meters now to zero them both and make sure they're both working, because as you said, you can have a bad power meter day, depending on what the variables are, but you can have there's twice as many bad days now with 2 power meters each side. Yeah, interesting stuff. Your take just quickly on Shimano not broadcasting Bluetooth power. I did a video on this the other day.
I would say the least of their problems, but that's just me. Yeah, it's tough because it's a huge problem. It's well, one, they've got an overpriced power meter, even if they had that working to begin with. But then the power meter isn't accurate, as I showed, I think you showed as well. And they're having, like what they call balance issues. And it's kind of neat, actually, we'll talk about it in a second, but everyone in the industry's picked this up, right? So they're having balance issues. But as you know, if you have left-right balance issues on 2 independent power meters, that means that in reality, you have 2 power meters that are wrong. One that's measuring low and one that's measuring high, or some variant thereof, right? So that means you've got 2 things that are wrong, and balance just is an indicator that you're inaccurate somewhere. But what's been fun about this whole thing, and I say fun, not like I'm laughing at Shimano's expense, but fun in that I'm excited that the industry, the sports journalism, media, cycling industry has caught on how to do accuracy testing better, right? So I think it's Ben Delaney from Bike Radar, I think, picked it up initially and noticed that the balance stuff was off, and did the time and did the analysis there to like really dig into that data and be like, no, this isn't right. Like if I'm one-legged pedaling, it shouldn't show values there, right?
Yeah.
And it shouldn't show and so it's really cool to see that across the board, and to also see, in the case of the Shimano, to have a large set of us all seeing the same thing across units on 3 different continents. He's in the US, you're in Australia, I'm in Europe, is cool. So yes, as far as Shimano, the fact that it doesn't have Bluetooth Smart is just kind of the nail in the coffin. Like at this point in that stage, if you don't have Bluetooth Smart on a unit and have a super clear plan to get there. Like if you're like, hey, we're announcing it at the Eurobike, we don't have Bluetooth Smart today, but we should have it on September 1.
If it's a firmware update away, that's fine, I guess you're saying, but if the power meter is inaccurate and that's sort of a lower level issue, there's bigger problems to address.
And Shimano said it's a firmware update away, but they've been saying that for a year now, without any timetables. We did
see that with the Vector 3s. It took a while for the Bluetooth to come out. I threw a rock at Garmin there because on the box it had Bluetooth support.
Yep.
But a number of other power meters have also listed Bluetooth support when it's only the Bluetooth management of the device. So it can be a bit deceiving, especially for people who just want to pick something off the list. And even some of the sellers of the Shimano power meter, it does support Bluetooth, but if you get home and try and use that on Zwift iOS, it gets a bit tricky, it gets a bit awkward. So interesting stuff. Onto smart bikes. A few years ago, smart bikes were all the talk. Last year, they were also, again, just all the talk. Well, we did see one we couldn't ride. This year, will it be the year of the smart bike, or will it be just more talk? What are your thoughts?
I think Eurobike will be mixed, right? I think we've had, certainly everyone last year talking about smart bikes. A lot of that driven by Zwift's desire to have these companies get in the smart bike realm. And so we had Tax announce their smart bike concept last year. This year it sounds like they'll be much closer to the shipping stage and the announcing stage. We had even Be Cool announce their smart bike, right? That I don't really know what happened there, but I guess
they announced something last year that we never saw either. That big hanging trainer with the
air. All but the air.
So that was all hot air, that one.
That was a lot of hot air. So thin air, hot air. It's all just air. So we had them announce stuff. Who else announced a smart bike? Someone else I'm thinking of. And lots of companies talked about smart bikes. So behind the scenes, you and I talked to every company. Every company's like, should we do smart bikes or not smart bikes? I don't think Eurobike will be the epicenter of smart bikes. I think this year we will see more smart bikes. Oh, Wattbike obviously had the smart bike this past year. So the question though is getting distribution for a lot of these entities. Like that's been really Wattbike's biggest hang-up, is how to get distribution for a beast of a bike.
It is a big box. I hid inside the box and popped out in my video. That's getting those shipped around versus something like a Neo, which I think we agree that the Neo was probably the smallest high-end smart trainer box that actually tidies up really well into a small box. A bike is going to be 4 times that minimum, 5 times the volume to ship those around, especially down to Australia.
Yep, and I think it's tough. I think I liked for what I did for erg mode, I really liked the Wattbike. I thought it was excellent for that. As I said in the review, and you kind of said the same thing, for Zwift, where you're shifting and gearing, it wasn't.
There was no snap. There was no
snap.
kick.
Yeah.
There was no oomph into
It
the
didn't
pedal.
feel realistic enough, and so it's
Very.
tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of meandered. It's like, where am I? What am I doing? So I think if companies can solve that, if they can figure that out where it feels right, and it feels like a bike, then there's a definite market there. I mean, the thing I really loved about the Watt bike was I could jump on it and it was ready to go. Like I didn't just put my bike on there, and it sounds like trivial stuff, but it was there, it just worked, it was great, except the gearing. So I think we're gonna see lots of good stuff there, but I think companies have to have unique, to use a marketing term, unique selling points, right?
Yeah, for
If
sure.
you're gonna make a smart bike, it can't just be a fancy spin bike. It has to be something that has some real cool aspect of it that you're like, that's what I didn't know I needed in life, right?
I guess appeal to us roadies and triathletes who ride our real bikes. We want to be able to get on there and go, this is our real bike as well, rather than just a toy. Yeah. Interesting. Finally, onto GPS head units. We're seeing a lot of lower end, newer models come out. We've seen the 130 from Garmin. We've seen the Element Mini. But we've also seen the relatively unknown companies developing at the high end with the Karoo head units, with a fully featured, almost fully featured Android unit. Why aren't we seeing the big players in the market tackle the high end? They seem to be sort of squabbling with each other at the lower end. Any reason for that? Where we see, the unknown players are bringing out these phenomenally featured devices.
It's tough. I think it's tough because it depends on how we define high end, right? So if we define high end is a beautiful, fast, responsive color touchscreen, that's like Karoo, right, realistically, and then Sigma as well with their ROX 12. Those are beautiful devices from a touching standpoint, right? And in the case of Sigma, they're far more advanced than Karoo is. But those devices lack a lot of the features that you find in even the mid-range Element or Garmin computers, right?
Well, the Sigma, I noticed, had no Bluetooth connection back to your phone.
Yeah.
So I use notifications all the time on the phone. If I'm out riding, it'll be during a work day, and I'll see the emails come through, and I'll see SMSs come through, I'll see who's calling. Sigma not having that just blew me away.
So, and the reason is actually the same reason Karoo doesn't have it. It's because they're both based on Android. And that doesn't mean that Android can't do it. It's that doing it on the Android stack with the hardware and the chipsets these companies have is actually incredibly difficult. And I've talked to both companies about it, and difficult to make it consistent and reliable. Those are the two most important things.
So from a nerd perspective, is it a MAC address change or a security hopping with every reboot or something like that?
It's exactly what it is. So it's a MAC address change that happens every single time.
So the pairing disappears and
pairing goes away, and
okay.
It's really, really tough. And they've both got ideas how they can do it, and they've both been trying to test it and trying to make it happen, but they're finding the reality, which is that it's just not consistent enough to have two devices talk to each other and have it to work well. And then otherwise you get into situations that people have with every other Bluetooth smart device out there where your pairings drop. And so you imagine people already scream at Garmin about that.
Yeah.
And that happens, every few weeks or something, maybe, or every few months.
Every firmware update. Oh, it's getting better. It's getting
exactly.
better.
But imagine if this happened.
There's a legacy there.
Every time you reboot your device.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's tough. I think, so that gets into like high end versus low end. We saw Garmin today come out with the new Edge Explore.
I saw it in person.
You saw it in person this morning.
The touchscreen works super well. I'll link below to Ray's touchscreen test.
Yep.
We took it to the extreme.
We did. So Mr. Australia over here was driving a little bit ago in the worst rain that we've had on this entire trip, the only rain we've had in this entire trip. The only we've had in like weeks. And it was just absolutely downpoured. And for some reason, I'm like, you know what we need to do? We need to do a touchscreen test at 50 miles an hour. So he's driving, I took the GoPro, I stuck it out the window with the thing, like it's hilarious to watch. And we did full downpour, like Florida hurricane style rain coming down onto the touchscreen while I went through the interface, and it was flawless. Like I didn't think it would work that well. And Shane's looking at me like, it's not gonna work at 50 miles an hour with pelting rain. And
I thought it was going to go flying off. Yeah. So just a summary of that unit. That's a lower end, but to me, when I first saw it, it looked like a 1030.
Yeah, so it looks just like a 1030. It's a tiny bit smaller, about 1 centimeter shorter, but the same overall gist of a larger display. It's aimed, historically that Explorer and touring line has been aimed at bike touring in Europe, essentially, and so aimed at usually a little bit older audience, didn't really care as much about tech specs. The problem was the price points never made sense. They were like $400 and $500. And at that point, you might as well just spend the extra $50. Like Garmin used to have a price only $50 lower than their full featured unit. And you're like, well, that's stupid. I'm not going to buy that. But now the Edge Explorer is $249. So that's the same price as the Bolt, same price as the Edge 520, $30 less than the 520 Plus. but it's a full color touchscreen, turn-by-turn routing, legit turn-by-turn. So if you make a mistake, then it just reroutes on the fly.
So the maps with the metadata in there.
Yep, and so we used it today to kind of put context on it. We didn't actually follow a specific route today. Instead, what we did is we put our endpoint, a coffee shop, about, 20 some odd K or something like that away. And then we followed the river ourselves, and then went in and out of different farms and roads, and just kind of meandered like
a few dead ends.
Yeah, a few dead ends, touring style. So we did control our own route, but we let this keep us going the right general direction. And when we didn't know where to go, we're like, okay, we'll follow the Garmin for a few minutes. If the Garmin could talk on this route, it would have swore at Shane and I a lot. And there's a few times where it would have been like, "Told you so, guys."
You idiots! You idiots! That's pretty much it.
But then we used the same way on the way back. We got there and we said go back to start, and we just roughly followed what it was doing. It was actually worked really well. And so for 249, that's a solid contender, and I think Garmin's getting it.
But the huge buts. And when Ray told me this, I'm like, WT buts.
But
what the buts?
There are 3 buts.
3 buts?
3 buts, yeah. I only talked about 2 with you, but because I know you don't cover the third one. First, butt number 1 is Strava Live Segments is not on the device itself.
That's the first thing I turn off.
Yeah.
I can't stand being told someone's my PB that I'm not going to hit in my current fitness state. Okay.
Not a big deal for me because I'm never going to hit it. I just doesn't. I leave it on. I stumble on those Strava segments and whatever. It doesn't. Zero impact on my purchasing decision for me personally.
Yep.
I do think it's super important for other head units to be clear on that. Number 2, also, by the way, on the Strava thing, it does upload to Strava, to be really clear on that, so there's no confusion there. And you can use Strava routes with it, which is also pretty cool.
Okay. Yep.
Number 2 big issue, no power meter support. So they're basically going 249. Their target market is my dad. My dad has no power meter and just wants a nice big screen to go out cycling and doesn't race. He just goes out on century rides, right? And that's what they're looking for. And a lot of people don't have power meters, right? 50-60% of the mainstream cycling market in races don't anyways, and way more than that if you're talking non-racing scenarios.
Yeah, so where the market is. Okay, so there's 2 buts.
2. Number 3, it does not actually have structured workouts on it. So some people care about that.
Nah,
you don't, so yeah. If you wanted to download structured workouts where it's you do intervals and stuff, it doesn't have that. But that's it. It has everything else. Full touchscreen, color, sensors. Works.
Bluetooth to your phone, notifications on screen.
All that.
Cool. Okay, the only big one there is the no power meter. So for me, as I said before, live segments I turn off. It just beeps too much at me.
Yep.
No power meter support that's a showstopper for me, for what I do in collecting the data. Yep. And the structured workouts, this is an interesting one because Stages Dash are all about having the structured workouts in front of you. I think if you're at a level of cycling where you need to know what your structured workouts are, you've got to know them off the top of your head. Your coach will send them to you. You'll know how to go out and do a 5x5, 10x5. Yeah. I guess some workout plans can be very complex, but if they're that complex, you need them on the screen in front of you. Do them inside. It gets dangerous outside.
That's definitely true, and I think you're right. I know from my standpoint, if I have structural workouts, I've memorized them because most of them are just repeating over the course of a season, right? And you're incrementing intervals and stuff like that. It's all the same patterns. And I agree with you. Doing them outside generally doesn't work well. There are rarities, right? If you're doing more you have a 5-hour ride and there's structures to that, right? The first hour is this zone.
If it's a marathon of a ride with 2x20s at the start, into some sprints, into a general overall. But even then, for me, back when I was training at the fittest I've been, it was all about using the terrain for my training. So I'd go out and find a hill that was 5 minutes up, 2.5 minutes down, 2 minutes down, and just use. And I've done that on Zwift as well. The structured workouts on Zwift, I use. But I can also use the environment because that's what I've always done outside. So structured training on a head unit to me is still a little foreign. I get it if it's trainer control over FEC and you want to program your head unit and do that. But even then, people say they use it for a race warm-up.
I've also seen it used for races themselves. I used to use it for races. So I used it for my Ironman races, and I would put in the zones I needed to be at for the different portions of the race.
Okay.
And so for that, it was useful because especially like an Ironman race, your brain is already crap. And to be 3 hours in and have this thing chirp at you and beep at you, as annoying as that may be for others around you, that, hey, you're over zone, you're over this, you're over that.
Yeah.
And in the case of an Ironman, that's a really long day. You still got to run a marathon.
Oof.
So to be able to kind of pull that back and say, hey, pay attention, that's actually useful there. And then you get into things like best bike split on the device itself, all that kind of stuff. So it's, I don't know.
Down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I think what Stages is doing is interesting. I think they got to find their place in life, and maybe we'll see that this weekend.
For me, the Dash, I've just been I've not even looked. I've saw it. It's like, okay, cool, but there's just way too much information on the screen for me at once. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. Obviously, they're selling units because they keep making them.
Yep.
Just to tie up here, Eurobike have announced they're now moving the date again. Before the date move last year, that's even happened again. So Eurobike is typically at the end of August, start of September. They moved it this year till tomorrow, the next day. It's very close on, which was 2 months earlier. And now they've moved it 1 month back again. Do you have any explanation or reason to think?
I think they realized it was a horrible idea.
The tour starts on Saturday, doesn't it? So
so to set the stage, right? At this port, we're going nowhere on this highway, but we're going to Eurobike, right? That's what you and I are doing. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of cycling media right now is going to the tour start. That's what they're going. They're going that way. Over there. A lot of kilometers over there. But they're all going that way. They're doing team preview shots right now. They're doing all that stuff right now. And then Saturday starts a tour, and Sunday they're there, and Monday they're there, and then they go off somewhere else, right? If you're covering the tour, and there's something like 1,600 accredited journalists at the tour, you are always there for those first 3 days. That's just the way it works. And then there's a long tail. The further you get into the tour, the less people are there until the
Peter Sagan gets kicked out. No one wants to watch.
Exactly.
It's a story that unfolds. But at the start, everyone's
there. But
including Chris Froome. Who'd have thought? We won't go into that.
But no, we won't talk about pharmaceuticals here. So, but that's the same start as a weekend here. And then on top of that, we have a La Tap Tour, which is down in the Alps also. So, a lot of the people in the cycling industry want to be there for that big event. It was just a really bad weekend. And then on top of all that, you've got German holidays, which Germans are off vacationing, so that means that availability of places to stay around the area of Eurobike, which is in the middle of nowhere. For those that aren't familiar, Eurobike is not held at a giant convention center in Berlin or some other big city.
Or Vegas.
No, it's held in Friedrichshafen. I can't remember.
We're unable to pronounce.
It's got a lot of letters in it, and it's held there.
I'll put a link in the description below.
Yep. And there's nothing around there except apple orchards.
I think the best way to get there is by a Zeppelin.
It is.
If you can catch a Zeppelin out the road, and it's where they make Zeppelins.
Yeah,
big hangars are actually the Zeppelin-y things, and the halls are actually where they, I guess, store them.
Yeah.
They're big halls. There's 9 big halls, plus Eurobike is massive. But the messe, whatever they call it, where they actually hold it, that's almost, it's too big for the town.
It's too big for the town.
The town cannot house 1,400 exhibitors plus, each having at least 5, 6, 7, 8 products.
Yep. And Eurobike is too big for this convention hall too, right? If you look at companies are on a waiting list to get in, for example, and then the spots that are available for newbies are horrible spots, which will always happen at every convention center. The challenge is that'll never change, because Eurobike as a convention is owned by the convention center, which is incredibly unusual.
This sounds like the ASO and a couple of the tour
races.
It
does. So this is, if you go back in the history of Eurobike.
Interesting.
And that's what started this convention center in the middle of nowhere. So it's really tough having the timing. Anyway, so it used to be the end of August, as we know. Got moved now to basically the first weekend of July. And then now it's moving to the end of July, which actually may not be a horrible time for it, to be honest, because that's after the tour. So it'll be, in theory, between 10 and 12 days after the tour, depending on where the tour is exactly next year time-wise, before the Vuelta, before a lot of the different European country holidays in August. So you work hard, you clear that at the end of July, and then you go off vacation. Still going to put pressure on companies like trainer companies and stuff that are, this is still a little bit early for them, as we've talked with companies the last few days.
We're mid-summer here, so to announce new trainers mid-summer on the market, we see even on Zwift, the numbers riding Zwift, that's my gauge of how popular things are at the moment, and the time frame of Zwift throughout the year. It's everyone's summer here.
Yeah.
So I guess next year puts it a little closer to release, but I think we'll see more of an announcement show this year as well, rather than a delivery show. But
definitely, I think there's only going to be a couple products that we'll be delivering here at the show versus everything else will be August, September, or whatever else.
So the tail of our content, I guess, will be from months to come.
A lot of stuff. But I mean, this weekend will be crazy. I mean, the number of products, I think I've been saying it's been like 35 or so products for a Eurobike. We're seeing though just in the last 2 to 3 days, a couple of companies are sliding things out and been like, that's not going to be at Eurobike, hold the horses there.
And we're okay. Well, from a technology point of view, we want to see things released, but that's okay because things have been very busy. So.
We are totally okay with that. The number of things I still have to do by Sunday, when companies now emailing like, can you pull this? I'm like, absolutely, because I haven't even started yet. So, yes.
Comments below what you hope to see at Eurobike. I'll look to be doing a lot of walkthroughs as well if I've got the time to do that. More meetings this year as well.
Yep.
So if I can do just a general walkthrough and bring everyone along, because this year there's no People's Day. You can't even get in if you're a people. You've got to be business or industry. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, well, I think we'll definitely see a little bit of attention paid to some of like those emerging technology areas, right? Like the Aero sensors of the world and stuff like that, popping out a bit more. We saw that last year, Eurobike companies talking about Aero sensors and like talking about their plans for them.
Garmin purchased Aero Mantis.
They did, yeah, purchased Aero Mantis about a year ago now, and we had Argon 18 talk about their Notio Connect, or Notio spin-off then, and they renamed it Connect by now.
So we're going to see a lot of what I'd call wacky tech, which I would have put the Kicker Climb in last year.
Yeah, I think
Is it
so.
more mainstream?
I think, yeah, I'd say like I would put a Climb in the wacky category. I would put the Aero sensors in the niche category. And I think we'll see still more things in the Climb category. Like we talked about rocker plates, right? There's a ton of DIY type solutions now, and that's sort of like, it may not work.
I sway either way with rocker plates, as you know. I don't know whether, bad pun. I don't know if they haven't nailed it yet. When I jump on one, and here's my yardstick.
Yep.
When I can sit on a bike rocker plate thing with my eyes closed and just ride my bike, as I have for 20 years or so, and like rip out a sprint, as we have in the races and to the town signs with our mates, when I can do that and go, yeah, that's like riding a bike, then they've got it.
Yep.
At the moment, it's not quite there.
What I think we're getting to, though, is that whole concept of, it's sort of like your video you did the other day with the Philips Hue lights and the Zwift setup and everything, and making things more immersive and realistic or something in Zwift.
Yep.
And people are aiming for that, and whether that's the front of your bike going up and down, or it's the whole bike rocking all over the place, or it's other technologies to make it more outdoor-like. I think that's what we'll see more of this year and the years to come, like in terms of how do you make the best way to sum it up, how do you make the ultimate Zwift pain cave? Like the one that you would have a viral video for and everyone would be like, oh man, you gotta check out so-and-so's cave. He's got this and this and this and this and this, right? Those are, I think, the technologies you're gonna see companies incorporating either in whole or in little bits here and there. And I think we'll see that obviously this weekend, but I think also over the next year or two of companies want that attention. They want something that people crave, and as polarizing as the Climb is from a priced point and whether or not it's valuable point, people crave it. I mean, your video and my video proved that from a numbers standpoint.
It is pretty cool. I've got to say, it is pretty cool. When you take it away, you're like, oh, I want that. When you take it away, you want it back. Kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's interesting. All right, we'll wrap it up there, Ray. So everybody, links below to Ray's, obviously, DCRainmaker.com, Ray's YouTube, Ray's Insta, and all my links as well as normal below, because we can put up Insta pictures.
You're really good at Instagram.
Really quick.
I'm not so good at Instagram.
We'll get Ray putting up more Instagram stuff.
Yeah, there we go.
So, because we can get stuff out, like one snap done, it's out there, we can just sort of show people what's around.
Yeah.
Videos, they take a while.
Yep.
So, links below to all those. Let us know again what you're looking for at Eurobike, what you hope to see, just what are your wacky ideas for products in the future that you just might make into a product, or companies might make into a product. We did see, sorry to drag this on rather than close up because the traffic's slow here. I think when companies like Wahoo do make a Climb, or someone does make a wacky product, they're the ones taking the risk. And I do like seeing companies putting their neck out there and going, look, we'll take the risk. If you don't buy it, that's okay. A lot of people criticize that, but hey, you don't have to buy it. I'm keen to see companies take that risk, because when they nail it and get it right, game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a good point. It is a risk. Like, people look at that and like, oh, why'd they waste their time on it? It's not just time, it's money, it's lost opportunity time, right? So
to focus on something else.
Exactly. So the engineers and all that stuff that, in the case of the Climb, Wahoo had to put engineers on the Climb to make that, and then had to spend the last year on delays with engineering resources and manufacturing resources and all that kind of stuff to get there. Will it work out for them? Yeah, probably.
I can't wait to see people's reviews of it themselves. We've done it. We've
done it, and it's shipping now. by the way.
Yeah.
Which, in case you didn't know that, it actually is shipping. They started shipping on...
Before Eurobike, because they announced it last Eurobike, that would have been a little bit embarrassing.
They squeaked it out there. I know they officially announced ordering on Tuesday. My understanding is the units have arrived at retailers today. I think today's Thursday, and yesterday as well. And so in theory, like, you can get one today somewhere in the world.
Awesome. All right, we'll leave it there. I'll get editing this video because it takes some time. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Yep. We shall keep safe in traffic like the people in front of us haven't done.
No.
All right, stay tuned. Lots more to come from Eurobike this week. Thanks, Ray.
Yep, thanks. Did that car just cut from there across?
I think he did the whole 3 lane.
I was like, wait a second.